years ago, after dating for 2 years. See, we both live in a relatively small town. I used to tell people that we have a storybook romance. We care for each other, talked endlessly, had great romance, great friends, and traveled a lot. For the last several years, I supported him while he went through law school, and finally, after landed his dream job, I could relax a bit. Flash forward 1 year, and he's not loving his job at all. Of course, big law is a lot of work, and he's already burnt out of it. He eventually decided to take some time off and soul search about his next career move. During this time, he decided to take a week away in Madrid, just to clear his mind a bit. Well, when he got home, he was acting strangely and was very distant. When I confronted him about it the next day, he admitted that he fell in love with someone else in Madrid. And when I asked him to stop talking to this person, he refused. He would not stop talking to a person that he only knew for 7 days, to preserve his marriage with somebody that he has loved unconditionally for 9 years. But at this point, I was already in the most vulnerable state. My binder of medical bills was 3 inches thick. From my first pregnancy to the day of our firstborn coming home from the NICU. With that in mind, I just accepted it at a blanket reason for everything each time. He would reopen that wound about how expensive it was for all that, how it's going to be more expensive the next time. Robert and I struggled with fertility issues for years. We then started a new method, IVF, and hopes to get at least 1 child together. Note that I saved for the majority of treatment while my husband only paid $2,000 to $3,000. We saved up for another round after a huge disappointment and heartbreak from failing the first time. Well, that's just how it goes. This time I'd put all the money, including my family's and my husband, and not even pay a cent. When our daughter was born, he didn't even care to visit the baby. I also had to pay out of pocket and was out of money, so I asked him if he could drop me off some dinner or order me some delivery. I did not ask him to contribute to paying for the hospital. He sounded really annoyed on the phone, claimed he did not have the money and he was out with his cousin at the bar in the burbs and won't be home tonight. Told me that I can eat whatever I have at home. Well, I was pretty much out of food, so ramen or canned soup it was. He did not even care that I had a major medical procedure and can't even afford food. I just wanted a comforting, takeout meal to help with feeling like utter crap, and he could not even do that for me. I'm at the worst at picking men. I hate him, and I hate myself for not choosing a better partner. Well, I soon found out that he even secretly pulled out $7,000. We had $11,000 in total, and I was completely and utterly shocked. I confronted him, and he casually reminded me on how many times his best friend complained about his, quote, old junk car, and he decided to lend him $7,000 to buy a decent car. His argument was that his friend would have done the same for him. I was beyond livid. I asked if he really thought that was okay, and he said that I should not worry and guarantee that his friend will pay us back in time. I lost it on him, and immediately demanded his friend send the money back and threatened police involvement in case he refused. Well, his friend immediately returned the money, but told my husband about the police thing, and my husband came home and yelled at me, calling me unhinged and selfish. I told him I saved up some of this money for his treatment, while he contributed nothing, even though we were in this together. He, quote, corrected me, saying I'm the one with the problem and he thought it was only fair that I, quote, make up for it by paying for the IVF myself. This hurt so badly, and I couldn't even argue anymore. He went to stay with his friend while constantly shaming me for how I treated them both, and for the police involvement like they stole from me or something. I went home to my parents for a week, and while on our laptop I found journal entries, intended for his therapist that he'd written while on vacation in Madrid about these affairs that he's been having. He also wrote about how he has never felt passion with me, and how he doesn't think our love is even compatible. Financially speaking, started my marriage with my husband completely debt-free, and I've worked for years to finally get him to be debt-free as well, and I've managed the finances full-time for all 3 years straight. He used to manage our finances too, but he has a history of sabotaging our financial goals and blowing up our budgets. He drained our accounts, leading us to homelessness 3 separate times. Letting us become homeless because an adult family member cannot be the responsible enough person to pay his own bills, or get into legal trouble is a hard thing for me to fully understand and wrap my head around. Before he did this, he had been looking at multitudes of things that, well, on a regular day, we definitely could not afford. He used credit or saved up on money for weeks or months. He had made it clear that intends to buy a new vehicle, tech, Airstream, game system, and other items just for him, not to improve our family's future at all. Well, a person can wish for stuff or want to work towards a treat for themselves, but he had not made an effort to save up for these expensive purchases at all. When I talk about investing or saving, he says that life is too short for that. I told him that it wasn't not about us, it was about Laura. And his response was that when Laura became an adult, she should work for what she wants. That statement seems backwards considering his actions as of lately. I really didn't want to wake up one day and find out that every cent has been spent behind my back. I told him I would like to open an account in my name and follow through with the plan. Well, a huge argument followed, and he gets angry. He goes on a rant about how I was dragging him down, how I was ungrateful, how most women would be ecstatic to be in the position I was in, and how he would find someone who could be grateful. I told him I do all the late-night feedings and take care of the baby during the day while he works. I begged him to just try taking care of the baby for a few days because I'm exhausted and stressed. He proceeds to insult me, then insults the baby. I told him, actually calmer than I thought I could be, that neither of us deserve these words right now. So, he packed up his clothing and put it in a storage and has been in Europe with his new lover since. He told me he doesn't care about me, our marriage, or our daughter. Then told me that he will not be coming home and just left. I'm still in shock a month later. I had to scramble to find a cheap place to live, move all of our stuff alone, and search for a full-time job. All the while he's in Europe, not working and traveling with his new lover. I had no idea what to do. I felt depressed. I felt stuck. I felt broken, humiliated, and emasculated. But my daughter needed me, and I needed to be strong for her. But I had no job and no childcare for the baby. It was just the two of us. My savings were beginning to run low, and the rent was coming up. So, I canceled the insurance, bank accounts, and cable, and his phone is next. Only thing that's requested for him to provide me with is a new cell phone number before he left, and he did not. He was also driving around with no car insurance. Fortunately, we soon had help. But not from my parents, but from my mom's eldest brother. He gave me a month's rent and basic groceries and even got me a job. Found an apartment nearby too. I will be in debt to him and his wife forever for all their help. Just after a few months, Robert started talking like he had made a mistake and wanted to come back. And I said, of course, you have a place here and I will forgive you. And my heart sang because he was coming back to me. Only he did not. He hemmed and hawed, and sometimes he was on the side of coming back, and sometimes he was on the side of staying with her. But every time he said he was coming back and then didn't, it was like he was leaving me all over again, tearing open the wound and making it fresh. It took an embarrassing long time for me to tell him that I was done with that game, and that I no longer wanted him back. And, well, he would have to find peace with his new situation. I felt broken and used and completely alone. I kept reliving the last 9 years, and I can't see how I could have seen this coming. He told me every day how much he loved me, and how he would do anything for our love. How do you go from fighting over who will die first so we don't have to live without the other, and him telling me he wants to have children, to this? I mean, I'm 37 years old and can't see myself ever investing in a long relationship like this again after sinking my literal heart and soul into this marriage and being tossed aside like a fool. However, his parents are nothing like him, and, I was raised in a Christian household. With that came gender roles that were ingrained in me at a very young age. My in-laws, however, hated that my parents taught us this way. Because of this, I became very close with my in-laws, especially my father-in-law instead of my own parents. Even after Robert left us, we were in touch now and then. Well, for more info, which is important, my in-laws lived in a beautiful house that had no neighbors, many trees, and a garden. They paid off the house after years and was very special to them. My father-in-law also had bad problems with his back, and a condition that would get worse until he couldn't go anymore. After my mother-in-law passed, he got worse and ended up needing at-home care. He didn't want to be a stranger in his home, so that was not an option. I think it was due to my grandmother's passing. Robert said he would not be able to take care of him and was planning on putting him in an old age home. I decided to stay with him since it would just be easier. My job can be worked effectively at home, and he'd get care from someone who was not a total stranger. In the time I took care of him, we filled the home with love and laughter my father-in-law brought to it. We used to toss cupcakes at the wall to see what could get the most to stick the furthest. Winner got to have the cake, but we always ended up sharing. He's the world's greatest practical jokester. I could tell infinite joke stories. As my father-in-law got worse, not a single call, not from his son, siblings, or extended family. We were joking about it once, and he said, "Maybe I should just give you, Missy, the house name, instead of your husband." He laughed after he said that, so I just assumed he was joking. Fast forward. The worst happened. I was the one who found him. I had to make the call. All of it. Well, as much as I was pushed away from Robert, I did not want to find out the news from a random person, so I was the one who told him. The funeral was the first time I saw him after he abandoned me and Laura. We had no idea where he's been all these years, but then it came time for the will. Now, it wasn't some telenova with all the dramatics, but let me tell you, it was intense. The house that was supposed to be Robert's became mine as well as a large sum of money and many other things that my father-in-law planned on giving to his son. Well, the executor of my father-in-law's estate contacted me before the funeral. Although it's $1.5 million, according to her. My intention is to use half of my inheritance money to move our family into the house and renovate it. Then save 40% to help my daughter in the future, like graduations, college, trips, her first car, etc. And have a small emergency fund. I'm not sure if I'm making the right choice, but I really just want my daughter to have the same happy and stress-free childhood I had. When I told Robert about the will, with my name in it, it also states that Robert can claim the inheritance only if I consented. I was accused of manipulating his father into giving it to me, and he was just yelling and screaming at me. He made an offhanded comment about how nice it must be to be rich overnight. Well, it was intense. For a second before some gentleman told him to show me some respect. This started a much larger fight, though. People who would not lift a finger for a loved one and yet entitled to their things after they're gone would definitely see this as some sort of manipulation. Wow. Not because it is, but because it fits their narrative. I was the one who cried and held my father-in-law's hand as he died. Who told him how much he was loved in the hours leading up to the moment, who had cleaned him up after he passed, helped put him on the funeral home stretcher, chose the outfit that he'd be buried in, and walked next to him for honor guard as he left our house for the last time. I loved him. My co-workers loved him, and his son was just so callous. He abandoned his wife and daughter and even neglected his own father's needs for decades. Robert's been since making snide remarks about how I took advantage of his dad's sickness by stealing his inheritance. Every time he makes this type of snide remark, it really sets me off, and we get into an argument about the will and other things. For some reason, has this idea that he should be getting the money. He says that it doesn't matter if his dad was emotionally weak, but he deserves his father's money. The next morning, he told me he wants me to sell my inheritance, so he can make some non-vital house repairs and possibly go on a vacation to get distracted from the sorrow. Well, I laughed, more out of anger than anything else, and told him that he had no right to suggest how to make the use of the inheritance that my father-in-law left when he refused to even visit him when he was sick. I got a call from his aunt, who was extremely angry. She called me irrational and told me that since I am not his blood relation, I have no right to receive property or money from him, and that the inheritance gives Robert the opportunity to return some of the money he spent on me and Laura. What the? He's bringing this topic up 1 to 2 times per week for the last month since my father-in-law's passing, and it's just increasingly making me mad. My response have ranged from, "My father-in-law just died. I don't want to think about this right now. So it's his, and I'm not going to try to take his will away. But he said that since we're married, I can't just make that decision myself, because technically that inheritance would belong to him. I don't know when Robert got so greedy. He just could not wait to stick his hands in his dead father's pockets. He could not even give me time and space to grieve because he was so eager to profit from his death. Well, I gave selflessly, expecting nothing in return, and I just wanted the good man to spend his last days in the home he loved, surrounded by his memories. I earned what was given to me by a man of principles. My father-in-law gave it to me. He wanted me to live in a house he loved and lived on, and he wanted to give all that to me. Giving it away to someone who insulted him and treated him at less, almost as an insult to his memory, huh? Robert has had everything handed to him on a silver platter, and even now feels entitled to what someone else put in the work for. For the first time in his life, his golden boy privileges was worthless. How creepily self-centered can it get? Well, I also told him, don't you dare dishonor a great man in order to cater to a lesser man like yourself. That would be a slap in the face to your dad. I will honor him by being strong and thinking for myself and not bending to the wants of awful people. I will fill the home that he loves so much with memories and keep him close. After this, he began using sweeter tones and literally begged me to give him the money, saying I can keep the house if I want, but he really needs the cash urgently. Well, I have a dilemma about the money Jack left me. I haven't touched the money yet. It's mine legally and will let me have a fresh start when I move back. I've never seen him beg someone like this, or a woman he left at the time of her need, for that matter. I wonder if it's karma that's brought Robert to this point. Update number 1. Thank you all for the outpouring support and advice. I can't tell you how comforting this is to hear your stories of healing and continued happiness after something like this has happened to you. I'm taking all your advice to heart. Well, you're correct. I live in the United Kingdom. That's really the most I care to say. I spent 2 days lining up appointments for the first week of October. I found a divorce attorney, a financial advisor, and a bank that's a bit out of the way. Some things to clarify. A lot of people asked how I did not divorce him after all these years, and he wasn't like this while we dated and after we got married. It probably started midway through my 4th pregnancy, with our now firstborn. It made sense that all of the trouble we faced just to have a child could have drained us, and I believe this because we kept all our bills paid and filed away. I'm still married because my situation is so cut and dry. I had to dig our family out the hole and got an apartment, got a job with someone's help, and built a life slowly. Well, now that I'm financially stable, I asked him for a divorce, finally, but he refused to sign. I firmly stood my ground as I conveyed to him that he doesn't get to control me or anything I do anymore. After 2 hours of trickle-truthing and gaslighting, he left. He drove his butt straight to his mistress's house after lying to me about how he was going to have to get a hotel for the night because he had nowhere to go, and I have pictures. He was served with divorce papers a couple days after this, and they were delivered to him by the sheriff. I filed for an at-fault divorce on the grounds of adultery and abandonment and asked him to pay my attorney's fees, and it was his fault I had to hire a lawyer. Pretty standard stuff, you know. So now I get a call from my lawyer, telling me he's contesting and wants me to pay his lawyer's fees. I'm not sure if he's contesting that he cheated or if he just doesn't want to pay for my lawyer, but either way I'm mad. I've spent years supporting this jerk, and have gone broke doing so. And he thinks he's entitled to have me pay for this whole thing on top of that. For what it's worth, I have tons of proof of his affair, text pictures, etc., and I also have proof of financial infidelity as well. I'm not sure what he thinks he's going to accomplish, but I just can't see a judge siding with him. His lawyer tried to get us to settle instead of getting his client dragged into court with all the people I would have come and testify about their affairs with him. And he knew his girlfriend or girlfriends would get dragged through the mud as well. He refused to pay my fees, claimed he was broke, but he has a job now, plus he has a source of income that he never even told me about. So we did not agree to settle. Update number 2. Robert never showed up to the divorce hearing, so everything was done without him. Most courts have some version of court call, but he didn't make a call as well. Anyways, I'm happily unmarried now. I also got full custody of our daughter. Oh, and the court ordered him to pay alimony for the half time we were actively married. I did not expect that. Before the divorce, when he knew he's going to get screwed at court, he showed up at my doorstep, but I slammed it in his face this time. He knocked until I threatened to call the police. He left after that, but showed up the next day, and the next, and the next. Finally, for my daughter's sake, I let him in. He insisted that he wanted to talk, and I decided to have one last talk with him and set my boundaries. We met in a public place, and the talk was long and hard. I wanted him to be honest, and I told him the moment I caught a lie, I was leaving. He explained that after his father died, his family basically blamed him for it. I thought he would talk about the inheritance, but he kept insisting on giving him another chance, that we can love each other again, and that we could be together. He got COVID, and it hit really hard, to the point that he believed he would die, and realized how alone he really was, how stupid he was, and the mistake he made so long ago. After all that, he said he regretted everything he did and said, and now he was ready to be family that we always meant to be. He never even mentioned our daughter at any moment at all, and only after I pointed it out he started to ask about her. I asked if he was really sorry, or are we just a last option? Did he really love us, or are we just consolation prizes? Did he come back for love, or because he has an ulterior motive? He was unable to answer any of it, and he only said things like, "It's not like that. Susan, you need to understand, I'm not like that." When I tried to settle that we were over, he grabbed my hand forcefully, and I told him to let go, that we were over. Neither I nor my daughter wanted anything to do with him, so please, leave us alone. We are living a good life without him. He then went mad, saying I could not leave him, that it wasn't my choice, and that he doesn't have anything else, that I can't take away his daughter. I still don't know why, but the last sentence absolutely triggered me. The next are my exact words, but what I said, here we go. Your daughter? Your daughter? You're not her father. You only gave your sperm to her. You're not a real father. Tell me, where were you when she was sick? Where were you when she had a fever? When she was scared at night? When did her first teeth fall? When she cried on the nights because she missed her dad? Where were you on her first day of school? Will you be there when she, has her first period? When she has her first boyfriend? When does her heart break for the second time because the first one who broke her heart was her own father? Which women were you with when she needed a dad? You have no right to claim you're her father because you never acted like a father, ever. He tried to reply, but I saw how he was unable with his words. Update number 3. I just want to say thank you everyone for the advice I needed. Renovation work on the house is going now that the divorce is granted. Changed all the locks and installed security cameras. I have a mortgage, free home, and this is an incredible boost to my financial situation. However, Robert decided to contest the will. My attorney has not advised anything specific yet. He's been civil lawyer before, so I can count on him. I expect to hear from him again within 2 weeks, as that's how long we have to agree on a mediator. And also, they're putting together a discovery request, so I expect to hear from him on that soon as well. My lawyer warned that through a mediator, they will try to break me down so they get something, but I won't let that happen. The mediator is necessary because the quote manipulation, accusation can be translated into a suit to invalidate my father-in-law's will for undue influence. People leaving valuable assets to the primary caregiver who would not otherwise inherit them can raise some red flags with the court system, who don't know the detailed situation. So, they have a decent chance of overturning the will. Robert has also informed my family that he wants to get back together, and they'd started putting pressure on me to accept. My parents and siblings have texted me saying they know how much he loves me, how he regretted ever hurting me, and how Laura deserved the chance to have a proper family. But I just ignored these texts, obviously. Update number 4. Final update. Wow. Sorry everyone for not updating for a very long time. I'm going to try to keep this short. During the mediation, Robert's lawyer played on my emotions and tried to get me to think about the times, other than he was cheating on me and abandoning his entire family. I did not let him play that game and held fast and stayed strong. The mediation failed because what we wanted changed the more we talked, and just not agreeing to not talk to each other was not enough for him. It seemed to be going in circles. We went to trial where his lawyer surprisingly did not argue at all. He was radio silent. So, Robert himself tried an even dirtier trick, including accusing my father-in-law of being on drugs, which he wasn't. He proceeds to argue that he was not together with me, so the will's not valid, to which he got stupidly agreed, leaving me and my daughter. Luckily, the will had a no contest clause. The judge had some choice words as well, as he was wasting the court's time by making bad faith arguments. Robert lost the contest. Only in the evening did my lawyer let me know that Robert's been lying to his attorney. Once all the truth and proof came to light, his attorney quit and told him to go play with himself. Robert came to me with all the rage in the world. He did not let me speak, but it looked like he was really frustrated and raging mad. I got upset and basically told him he did not have the right to be frustrated with me for his own wrongs. Turns out I disrupted his plan to get revenge on me for causing him to be a serial cheater. He did finally shut up after I gave him the handwritten letter from his dad that said he won't get an inch his entire miserable life. Recently, I was looking around the house for some cards that I've given to my father-in-law for special occasions, and I could not find them anywhere. I looked through a drawer where he keeps random papers of his writing and drawings and found an old letter. I didn't read the entire thing, but the first sentence started with, "You've been dead to me for 10 years now, because that's how long it's been since you last recognized me." Since then, Robert contacted me. I do feel fortunate that my daughter was too young to remember my divorce and all the bitter things that came with it. I'm hoping to give her the best in the world with the help of her lovely grandfather's inheritance.